Okay, this is the first tutorial I'm going to do about web design. Some of the little tweaks and things you can do. One of the things I've been talking about in the introduction video, if you watch that, is the differences between Internet Explorer and other browsers. This basically started creating problems when people start using divs instead of tables. Tables are a little bit more redundant these days, and there's a lot more style possibilities with divs. The big issue though is obviously these have different rendering options in different browsers. Saying that, what I've done is I've set up some examples here, 1 and 2. I'll show you 2 in a minute, but this is how you would set up, say for instance, some divs to then start styling. It's not been styled yet. If I go to another little application I use regularly, which is CS Edit, you'll see if I click on the X-ray option, this is how basically divs are set up. They're basically horizontal elements that go in steps down the page, and if I show you in a text editor, basically this is one div. This is how it would show basically on the page. Div 1, div 2 and div 3. I've named them already. I've given them IDs because basically what I would like to do is to actually style these to show you the examples of what I'm trying to get at with the styling option to make them different. The big issue now is, I'm just going to save that, go back to Safari. As it says here, what happens if I want to float this one to the left, put this one next to the left one, but have this one sitting underneath? How do I achieve this? And how do I achieve it in all the different browsers? Yeah. Here we have Internet Explorer 6, and you see it's just set up like before. Okay. What I am going to do is go back to this application. You notice I've already set up the CSS file and made all the IDs ready, but they're empty. Okay. What I'm going to do is simply do what I would normally do in this situation, is just make the first one where it says float left, say float left, which automatically, you notice, puts the float right up, yeah, but it puts it still in a long, narrow div, okay, same thing with that one, but you notice what happens with the float left is it's basically pushing it to the left and actually constraining it around the actual shape of the letters, okay, whereas this one is now actually floating underneath div 1, okay, and it's been pushed with the option to actually make the text align to the last part of text on the element above it, okay, which you don't probably want. What I'm going to do is do the obvious thing, is to make test 2 float to the right, okay, which does that. Okay, let me just save that and show you that in a in a browser. Go back to Safari. Yeah, this is basically what's happening on example 2. Alright, what you'll notice is this floats to the right, this floats to the left, but unfortunately the text that was on the third level gets stuck in the middle, because what's happening is when you put the float options in, it makes all the elements below it float up to the top of the page. So it's acting like that's the first element where it says no floating. Yeah, and this is like hovering above it. Okay, so it's not getting affected by any kind of alignment issues or padding or margins or anything. Okay, that creates a problem because you don't want that no floating there, you want it underneath here. Okay, let me just show you what that looks like in Internet Explorer 6, exactly the same. Okay, much the same as this one. Okay, and another thing you'll notice is the float right goes all the way to the right. Yeah, you want it actually floating next to the left like we did before, which you didn't do. Okay, so there's one way of fixing that for a start. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this here. I'm going to go to my example. What you can do is you can add an extra div. What this is going to do is create a kind of container for these two elements, the left and the right, leaving the third one as a separate element. Yeah, but as you see, what I've done is I've called it div and closed the div here. Okay, but if I do actually go to your browser, look at option example 2, it's basically still pushing the float to the right and left and making this a problem here. Why is that? because unfortunately divs, unless they've been given any kind of style element or have text in them, become completely dimensionless. Yeah, I'll see if I can show you how that works in CSEdit, which is quite good because it actually allows you to activate this X-ray mode, which means you can choose elements which prove how the dimensions work on each of these elements. If you notice here, it says test 1, which is the one we've floated to the left. If I click here, it's floated to the right, and you can see it's actually restricting it to the dimensions of the words. You also notice in this that it gives you the cascade of all the actual different elements contained within, say, this one or this one. And you'll see there, that's the actual element for my div. Okay, if I click on it, you'll see what's appeared is a little, grey box, which has got no depth or width, except for the actual width of the left element. Okay, like that. If I click here as well, it will still appear because it's aligning itself to the first one. Okay, so this creates a problem because obviously it's not having any depth as much as the text, and so, as I said before, the float is acting like it's actually hovering above the whole page, and this is not hovering above the page, so it's forced up to the top. Okay, but again, it does work in Internet Explorer 6, okay, which is a good thing. Let me just nip back here. Okay, what you'll notice is what I can do, and I'm going to do it on example 2, is give it an ID. What you do with IDs and classes is actually start allowing yourself to add some style to it, which can then change the conditions by which it's displayed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, all I've done is inside that wrapping div, is just give it an ID called container, which is a useful name because it contains things. I'm going to save it, go back to CSEdit, and notice nothing else has changed again. Okay, but what we've got to do is, I'm going to go to the top of the page and create an identification and call it container, like so. In the wrong place, container. Okay, and as you see at the moment it's empty. Plus I put it into the wrong one. It's got to be in document 2. Container. Okay, there it is. It's empty, and you'll see it still doesn't do anything, and the div has actually floated all the way across. Okay, which means it's an empty div. What we can do now is style it. Okay, and as I said before, you want this floating next to the left. You don't want it all the way across there. You'll notice as soon as you start adjusting the height of your, the width of your browser, it does move. But maybe you want it as a block sitting here constantly. Okay, you can do this simply by changing the dimensions of your float. Oh, sorry, your container with your floats in it. Okay, so if I make it 400, you notice the float for the right automatically goes to the right a little bit. If I give it 30, yeah, you'll automatically notice it's actually dropped the element we want below each of these two below, and also automatically then gives it the right positioning for it. Okay, what we can obviously do with this is change the dimensions until we get it into the position we want, which is, say, for instance, there. Okay, this is all fair and good. I'll save it. I'm going to save number 1 as well, because you can't test these in browsers unless they're saved. Just press refresh on both of those. What you see now is this is actually in the right place, and it doesn't get adjusted by creating a new width to your browser window, whereas before it did. Obviously it changed it, because what it's doing is it's seeing the whole page as the actual dimension it fits into. Now it's got basically a container which these two elements sit inside of, and we've restricted it to whatever pixel that is there, so it can never float to the right further than the point of that div. Okay, now this is all fair and good, as I said it before. The only problem is some of these elements don't work very well in some browsers. Okay, so what you can do here is, if I get rid of these float left and right on this, there is another option. Let me just refresh it. You'll notice it's all gone back to the way it was before. There is another option, which is to actually use some of these display changes for instance, inline. Inline is quite useful because it acts like it's a text editor, and it puts everything that you're selecting as if it's in line to the piece of text you're using. So if I just change those two elements to inline, yeah, you'll notice they do exactly what you want, even though the div pushes itself all the way across. Yeah, like so. Yeah, it's making this act like it's contained inside those two float areas. Alright, so I'm going to save that, show you that in Safari. Okay, so that works. Okay, show you it inside Internet Explorer. That works. Okay, unfortunately it doesn't work in some things, especially when you start adding extra elements. So what I'm going to show you now is the problem. The most popular one you can use to do this little test is to inline-block, yeah, which is this one. Again, it doesn't change the look of it at all, okay, but it does affect it if you start adding extra things to it, okay, text, pictures, whatever. So if I now refresh this, you'll notice it's all working. We go to Internet Explorer 6, you notice it's not working, okay, oh dear. This is because Internet Explorer 6 doesn't recognize the inline-block tag, because for instance it doesn't even recognize the block option, which is the same as this CS edit, and also if I do it in, yeah, so the block thing doesn't work, okay. So what you can do is change this and affect it, yeah. I'll put these back to inline-block. This is basically what we want, okay. You notice it's not even got the container, yeah, so you can have as many things added to this as much as you want, and it doesn't affect the actual need for a dimensional container, okay. Unfortunately, as I said, it doesn't work in Internet Explorer 6 or some Mozilla browsers, okay. But there is a little hack you can do, and this is the important part, which is what I'm here to show you. I've actually copied and I'm going to paste it in because I don't want to type it all out, okay. And if I just add, well, no, I've actually made it so I haven't got it, okay. Doesn't matter. What I can do, I'll just add a recent one. I'm going to add uses Villa. If I find here, I've actually incorporated it in this CSS somewhere down near the bottom. Here it is. Let's copy it, quick close it. If I just now take that and then press that, you notice it popped up there, yeah, as it was before, okay, and same there. All this is doing, it's not actually doing what you think it should be doing, okay. It's actually working as a multiple option thing. Some of these things, you notice is display, display, display. You can't have that 3 times working for the same browser, so what it's doing is adding extra little pieces, which is like, for instance, this one, it says Mozilla browsers, and it says inline stack, the stack being different to block, you see. But it's got to make it so it recognizes it differently, okay, which is fair enough. So the actual one we want to use for, say, for Safari is this one, inline-block, okay. The zoom is just an effect to size everything correctly, okay. And this one, which is the important one, is actually putting it to the one that was working, if you remember it saying inline, yeah. But by including the asterisk at the start, it makes it so only Internet Explorer 6 recognizes it, okay, which is the useful part. However, to make it all work properly, especially if you're starting to use pictures and text which have different heights, you have to make sure you put the vertical line to the top. Otherwise, I don't know if it's going to work on this, no, it doesn't. If you do have things of different heights, you'll notice they all get staggered, and you may want to align everything directly on the top surface. But what you have to do is also make sure you add it to every element you want to be in that part of that float, which is basically to the top, okay. So these two have to have the same variables added to it, okay. That's just a little hack, and I'll talk more about this hack later, this little asterisk, and also probably other ones you can use for other browsers, okay. That's how to solve the problem, let me just save it again, of getting 2 elements floating next to each other with one below it and not pushing it up, okay, which is useful. Yeah, there are some issues that arise by this, and I'll show you in the next tutorial. This is the starting point, okay, so instead of getting something like that, you can get something like that, okay, in a more simplified way. Okay, hopefully that helps.